Hello, afternoon. So, where were you? Oh, okay, okay. So, can I assume that you know what was taught in the first class? Okay, so you saw that. Okay, because there is a point, or there is a reason why I have just designed this in such a manner whereby you could have some basic concepts discussion, okay, in the first 3, 4 classes, because uh, those can we start? Because those concepts are important to understand things which are important, okay? So it is actually a good background that we are developing in these 3, 4 classes. So I will start Plato also, no problem in that, but we will be using many terms in Plato. So instead of understanding those very essential terms then and there, it would be better if we could have a basic idea about those things, okay? So yesterday we discussed what is basically it means when we use the term political thought, okay? And to understand it better, we compared it with some other terms, interrelated terms. So for example, it was political theory, okay, then political ideology, political philosophy. Then you saw that many a times political thought will be containing what is there in political philosophy, or will be containing what is there in political theory, but it will not be just about that. So there are markers of very clear distinction between these terms, yes or no? Just to check whether we have understood that thing properly or not, what defines the ideology according to you? Political ideology, dogmatic feature, very good. What else? Very good, very good. You recall that? So it has very clear relation with the power, okay? And that is shown in its zeal to defend either existing or proposed distribution of power. Yes or no? What about political theory then? Very good. Explains. Okay, explains. What is the difference between political theory and political thought? One is of an individual, which theory generally is a speculation of an individual. Yes, very good. Okay, and that is of a community. Okay, so what is the significance if we understand thought to be something which is related to community? What does that imply? Can you tell something regarding this? Community will exist in a particular space at a particular time, yes or no? So that denotes what? That denotes that thought is time bound as well as space bound. Okay? And what is actually the purpose, or you can say what does political thought do? करता क्या है ये? So it is description, examination, scrutiny of ideas of political thinkers. What else? Yes, analysis also. What else? Very good. बहुत बढ़िया. What else? So you followed the discussion properly, huh? What else? It also addresses universal and perennial. Such a good class, seriously. In the first class itself, you understood these things, okay? जिसको political science खत्म होने के बाद भी लोगों को confusion रहता है कि what does that mean? Okay, what else? Can you identify some other task that political thought performs? One is it is historical, definitely. Historical, yes. So historical analysis, historical comparison, description, that is also there. To political philosophy, great, very good. Yes, then Something related to values. There is clearly the identification of certain values in different traditions of political thought. Yeah, we discussed that. So in case of Western political thought, it identifies certain values, and those values are equality, yes or no? Liberty, democratic tradition. Similarly, in case of Indian political tradition or political thought, again there will be identification of certain values with respect to, and those values are, for example, spiritualism, for example, individuals' connection or its inseparable existence with society, yes or no? Cooperative living, okay? More of a communitarian view of society, yes or no? So this is to be found in Indian political thought. Very good, very good. What is the difference between political theory and political ideology? Can I say that all political ideologies are political philosophies? Can I say that? Sir, all political uh, all political ideologies are political philosophies. Can I say that? हाँ, आप क्या बोल रहे हो? That is correct. When you say no, sir, because political philosophy also means this, you are saying this, okay? Also means this or that. So when the moment you say political philosophy also means this, implied is the meaning that maybe it means this also. Okay, so that is why that interpretation is correct. That yes, all political ideologies are political philosophies, but but political philosophy is not just about those ideologies. Okay, so Venn diagram, है ना? Getting it? So after understanding things, just draw these Venn diagrams. This is political philosophy. This is now. In this case, what you can do? This is political philosophy. Maybe this is political ideology or something like this also. Getting it? Because all political ideologies doesn't mean they are political philosophies. Okay, so maybe they're close, but generally this will be true. Okay. Okay. Now after that we understood that when it comes to the content of political thought, we come to have this tradition of classics. Okay, and classics would mean what? Classics is the work of excellence is starting from Plato to Marx. Some would argue, for example, McIntyre has argued that it ends with Hegel because what Marx said was in response to Hegel. Okay, लेकिन there is a general consensus, academic consensus कि when it comes to classics, it actually includes the work of all the political thinkers from Plato to Marx. Okay, from Plato to Marx. तो आज हम उसी को देखते हैं. Okay, and now see this. Apart from this, you have apart from this Marx, आपके syllabus में अगर आप देखें तो Gramsci and then Hannah Arendt. Okay, so this is what you have included. So you are actually going to study most of the classics of political science, or at least the most important ideas expressed in those classics. Okay, the question that I raised yesterday was what makes these classics is still relevant. Yes, that was my last part of the discussion. Yes or no? And the answer was there is something that makes them the books of contemporary politics also. Yes or no? There is something that makes these classics also the books of contemporary politics. And what precisely? The set of questions that there is. Very good. The set of questions that there is. Okay, so we settled our discussion here at that point that it is actually the questions which are so basic and I can say so enduring and abiding and compelling that every generation is beset by those questions, and that is why they become important in almost every age. Okay, this is the last point of discussion. Today we are going to start from this point, and we will find the discussion of certain theorists questioning even this premise. Okay, questioning even this premise. These may be not very abiding or enduring questions, or it is not just because of this enduring nature of questions that we study classics. Okay, so we are going to see, we are going to be concerned about the methodological issues. So this is actually the topic in methodological issues. What we can be certain of is this, that yes, somehow these classics are important. Okay, somehow we get enlightened by these, by the readings of these classics. But then comes the question of this is ascertaining the method which is going to ensure the correct meaning of those things which are mentioned in classics. Okay, so there comes another debate of methods. Methods with regard to what? Methods with regard to finding out, or you can say this quest for finding out the correct meaning. How we can be certain whether the meaning that we are actually deriving from those classics, or the words or the passages of those classics, is correct or not. Okay? Getting it? That is a concern. So when it comes to methods or methodology, it's all about a quest for deriving the correct meaning. Because if you are not able to do so, then the whole purpose is useless. It is not futile. It is futile. Okay? Methods. Correct meaning. Okay? Now understand that when we have a survey of all the methods that have been employed to find out the meaning, one particular method that has dominated a scene for a long period of time, okay, and that method is textual method. Okay, textual method. इस चीज को समझो. Textual method. So what is textual method? A method that you can say remained in vogue for a long period of time. Okay, for a long period of time. Was questioned only in the middle of the last century. See, the study of the classics is happening right from the ancient times, yes or no? So this method actually remained the workable method till the middle of the last century. You can say that no, when it comes to the study of classics, it started in serious way, in some serious way only in 19th century. I will agree with that point. But even that point is long enough to say that it is long, yes or no? So it is going to be questioned only in the middle of 19th century. Now understand what is textual method. Okay, very important. What is textual method here? Textual method considers that, for example, if you are trying to understand any particular text, by text we mean the works of these first rank thinkers. Okay, so let us say Republic. Republic is the magnum opus of Plato. Or you can say Prince, Machiavelli's book. Leviathan is the book written by Hobbes. So these texts we are talking about. Now, if we want to understand their exact meaning, then textual method suggests that text in itself is enough. Text in itself is enough, okay? That means if you want to understand what is the meaning of this particular passage in Leviathan, in let us say in Prince, then what you have to do, if you could not understand the meaning, then you have to read the same thing again and again. Okay? Because meaning does not lie beyond this. So in that case, it is establishing what? It is establishing what we can now call it to be the autonomy of text. Autonomy of text. Getting it? So textual method is establishing the autonomy of text. Text in itself is enough to understand the meaning discussed, meaning of the passages or the things discussed in the text. Okay? It is so because text in this method You can say is self-sufficient. इसका मतलब क्या हुआ? What is the meaning of this? That it is self-sufficient. It is self-sufficient, or you can say this, that it is self-sufficient object. So text in itself is enough. It in itself is a self-sufficient object. So it establishes the autonomy of text. Now what happens? That you get a passage in Leviathan or in Prince or in Republic, and you do not understand it. Now you do read it again, and even then you do not understand it. So what the textual method suggests? Reread. And after reread, connect it with some other passage. Getting it? In the same book. So you are going to connect it with some other passage in the same book. Now even if that is not workable, then what you will do? You will see the other works of, let us say, if you are reading Leviathan, the other works of the same thinker. Okay, so Hobbes has also written a book which is philosophically richer, 𝐂𝐸𝐻𝐿. So if you want to understand Leviathan and you are not able to understand it by n number of readings, and also by connecting it with some other passages in some parts of the book, then read other works of the same thinker. Okay. Now, when you will read other works of the same thinker, then you will come to understand it. Okay. Autonomy of text. Text being a self-sufficient object. You don't require anything other than that text to understand it. This is what it means. Are you getting this? Now see that Leviathan is a book which was published in 17th century, middle of the 17th century, 2-3 years after the signing of this treaty in 1648. Do you know about that treaty? Treaty of Westphalia, very good. That gave rise to the concept of nation state as we know it today. Okay, we are going to discuss that also. Now, this book, Leviathan, is going to give the very powerful expression to the notions that emerged in the book, in the Treaty of Westphalia. It is actually a Treaty of Westphalia that welded the concept of territoriality and sovereignty. The very concept of nation state as we understand it today is actually, its origin is to be found in Treaty of Westphalia. Okay, we are going to see that in detail, the thoughts with the work of the same thinker, let us say 𝐂𝐸𝐻𝐿 in this context. 𝐂𝐸𝐻𝐿 is another work. Okay, do you think that textual method is going to work or is going to be workable when it comes to finding the meaning of the text? Not always. Why? Okay, you don't think that the age and time of the thinker will be mentioned in the text itself? Correct. Correct. Actually, this textual method, which establishes the autonomy of the text, considers text to be self-sufficient object, was questioned by something called Cambridge School. Okay, Cambridge School in the decade of 60s in last century. Okay, it is not just the opposition that is coming from Cambridge School. It is actually the reasoning that was provided by Cambridge School and also the alternatives which is going to prove that how textual approach is not very correct way of approaching any particular text or approaching the study of any particular text. What Cambridge School pointed out that when it comes to finding out the meaning, then meaning is always to be seen in a particular context. We can attach meaning to things, to words, only in a particular context. So it is a context that gives meaning to anything. Okay? So what is being said here is this, that if the purpose is to find out the meaning, then what is essential to realize that it is the context which provides meaning to the things. Okay? To the words, to everything. Now, if we are not looking into the context and we are taking the text as a self-sufficient object, then we are imposing our own context in a particular text. We are imposing our own context in a particular text. That means there has been a context of the text in which it was written. And if we are not looking into it, we are actually giving meaning to those things which are there in the text by the context that we are living in. Okay, or from the context that we are living in. So the contextual method, as it was called, also called social context method, is going to give primacy to what? Is going to give primacy to the context. Okay, it is going to give primacy to the context. Now see, precisely for which reason? This particular reason, that it is the context that give meaning to the things. Okay, without context, if we go with the textual method, then textual method में क्या होता है? We impose our own context over the text. Okay, a very important flaw is being pointed out here. If the assertion is that the meaning can be known only in context, then there is some kind of context even in textual method. Okay, and that context is context of our own time. It is our context that we are actually imposing over the text. Getting it? So even when we are considering text to be a self-sufficient object, we are applying our context, and we are actually deriving the meaning by applying our context, and that is not, in that sense, that is not correct. Okay, understand that when we go for textual method and consider text to be self-sufficient, then we will come across the questions raised by different philosophers, the set of questions that we were talking about. And if we do not understand the context, here it is being said, then we will be making the generalizations of the answers without considering the time frame, and definitely we will be making mistake there. Okay, which kind of mistake? Mistakes of generalizations and unnecessary comparisons. Okay, what may be the example here? The example is this: if we do not put things into context, if we do not contextualize the text, then we will find that the whole Western political thought is nothing but the comparative study of the answers of the same questions. Getting it? Comparative study of the answers of the same questions. So Plato at one time discussed what should be the ideal state. Aristotle in the next generation is going to talk about his own version of best state. Okay, what we are doing, if we are not putting things into context, we are making a comparison of the answers of the same question, and there we will be committing some very crucial errors, and various examples can be cited to show that how crucial those errors can be. Okay, so for example, I have this pictures of these philosophers that you are going to study, these political thinkers, starting from Plato to Hannah Arendt. Okay, now see this person, Aristotle, in many sense my personal favorite. Okay, Aristotle. So he has written books on politics, he has written books on ethics, he has written book on science. This is also the person who is called the father of political science. Okay, and also the father of science. He was the first person to propose the laws of motion. okay, which were refuted by Newton. Okay, so this person was actually so knowledgeable that in academic community he has been known to be the master of those who know. The master of those who know. Those who know are called the master. Aristotle is the master of the masters. Okay, as I said that he has written on many topics. Actually, this was a time period when it comes to knowledge, it was all encompassing. It was not studied or pursued in silos. Okay, so he used to study what we call now today the pure science, philosophy, mathematics, everything. And he has also dealt with ethics, the question of ethics. Okay, and there is this famous book called Nicomachean Ethics. You study something in ethics, GS4, that while scrutinizing whether any particular act is ethical or not, while scrutinizing the morality of any particular action, one prerequisite is this, that you must have done that particular task or that particular act only when you had full free choice. Yes or no? That means your ethical or moral scrutiny stands valid only when the act has been done when there was free choice, free will. When you were compelled to do something, then ethical or moral scrutiny is not valid. Getting it? This is something that you study in GS4. If you have not studied GS4, you will study that. This is one of the prerequisite of ethical or moral scrutiny, that the act must have been done in free will. This is derived from this premise that you find in Nicomachean Ethics. It is the Aristotle who dealt with this particular premise before anyone else. Okay, that means the ethical or moral scrutiny of your act can be done, or it is valid only when you have done that out of free will. Okay, free will, free choice. You had choice. Only then the question of ethical or moral scrutiny arises. Okay, getting it simple? If I just put a gun on your head and you compel you to do something, then you do it, something immoral, then moral or ethical scrutiny does not make any sense. Yes or no? This particular premise is discussed in length in Nicomachean Ethics written by Aristotle. Getting it? 300 BC. ये BC के scholars हैं before Christ, और ये non-medieval scholar हैं. Here you start modern political thinkers. Okay? So ancient, non-medieval, modern, and ancient Greece. Okay? Non-medieval का मतलब है not completely modern. There is a particular reason we are going to see that. Okay? Because he could not come out with a complete theory of sovereignty which characterizes the modern political thinking. Okay, so modern political structure is characterized by sovereignty, a completely autonomous sphere of politics. He started doing that but could not finish it, and that is why we call him non-medieval, but not completely modern. Okay, हम देखेंगे इन चीज़ को डिटेल्स में बाद में वापस. अभी तो हम जान रहे हैं sorry. Yes, during that time, actually, religion was dominating over politics, and he's the first person who started giving a secular sphere to the politics. Okay, I started secularization process, initiated that. But what was also needed was to come out with a complete theory of sovereignty. That is something that we are going to find in the writings of Hobbes. Okay. And that is why we say that it is from this point the modern political thinking starts. These are very common things. We'll come to know about it. Okay, हम इसके मैं अभी discuss नहीं कर रहा, हम इससे भी ज़्यादा basic से discuss कर रहे हैं अभी. Okay, so I total talk something in Nicomachean Ethics, and you still study that. आप बहुत श्योर हो जाइए कि GS4 में पढ़ने वाले हैं चीज़ कि भाई ethical moral scrutiny का क्वेश्चन तब उठता है जब free choice, free will से किया गया हो action. Okay. Now coming to this, इनको छोड़ो आप, इनको छोड़ो. This thinker, J.S. Mill, son of James Mill. Okay, famous utilitarian, a champion of liberalism. Now, a champion of liberalism is going to say something on liberty, okay, and he's going to champion the cause of liberty and many other things. And there he sounds similar to what Aristotle said. So emphasizing over this freedom, intellectual freedom, emphasizing over liberty, and also the importance of choice, free choice, he sees that that is very important for development of mental faculties. Okay, he is saying that particular thing, free choice, is very important for any action to ascertain whether it is moral or not. And he is saying that same thing is very important for proper development of mental faculties. Okay, both are emphasizing on what? The free choice, freedom, yes or no? Free will. Getting it? Can I say, and this is a person who is liberal, because by this time, liberalism as a tradition of ideas has already taken a good shape. Okay? Two different political thinkers. इनमें फर्क कितना है? Almost 2 millennia का फर्क है. Okay? Almost वही बात कह रहे हैं. Can I say that it is just that Aristotle did not know he was liberal. उसे पता नहीं था और लिबरल था, है ना? ये है टेक्सचुअल अप्रोच, अभी आपने जो किया, है ना भाई? इसको कहने का क्या मतलब कि वो लिबरल था नहीं था? अरे उसके जमाने में लिबरलिज्म था ही नहीं, समझ रहे हो इस चीज को? अच्छा, लिबरल था तो क्या लिबरल जब आप बोल दोगे तो does it mean that Aristotle will subscribe to everything what we mean by liberalism today? No, he won't. So, for example, he won't subscribe to the idea of universal adult suffrage, which is to be found in so many liberal democracies. He was very particular when it comes to the qualifications required for becoming a citizen. Getting it? Getting it or not? So, this is the mistake that you make while you consider classics to be just the comparative answers of the same questions. It is not. He was saying this thing in a particular context for a particular reason. Now it sounds similar to something that was said by J.S. Mill, doesn't make Aristotle a utilitarian or a liberal. Getting it? Now this is the mistake that you do while you approach the text with textual approach. Okay? And a study of classics comes to be the study of comparative study of answers of the same question. That is not how it should be done. Okay, even more, you can say, more relevant example that you can make here is this. So he is Plato. He is the teacher of Aristotle, and you have this person. You know about him? Karl Marx. Yes or no? Now, Plato addressed the corruption of his time in his book Republic. Okay, he comes out with various solutions. Also addressed with the questions like what is justice? What should be the content, nature, shape of an ideal state? Okay, who should rule? What should be the scheme of education? So these are all the questions that he has dealt with in good detail. Okay, in great detail actually. And there, when he intends to solve the problem of corruption at this time, to make an ideal state which will be capable of resolving all these problems, which actually according to him became the reason behind the downfall of Athens, and also perhaps the defeat of Athens in famous Peloponnesian War. He says that there is a direct link between corruption and this desire for money, power. Okay, nepotism. So these are all linked. So corruption is there. One driving force behind this is this instinct, this desire for having money. Okay, so he comes out with a scheme of education that according to him is supposed to produce a guardian class. Okay, guardian class. He calls it guardian class. The very people who are going to rule. So it consists of rulers and also the soldiers. Okay, and then makes certain provisions in his state whereby this guardian class is not going to have the property of their own. Property of their own. So they will be sharing property. Okay, understand, just follow this. These are the instances of their philosophy which we are taking to understand something here in this particular context. Okay, all these things are going to come in detail when we are going to address that particular thinker. So the essence is this, that he intended to solve the problem of his time by linking it with this problem of money, and then he provided the solution by saying that guardian class is not going to have the property of their own, and they will be having the property as a common property. Okay, so that property will be common to all guardian class. Getting it? This in retrospect was called to be communism. Okay, communism of property, and he also went ahead and did the same for family. Okay, you'll see that. So communism of property and family. Okay, just restrict our discussion to this property part, because in most simple terms you define communism to be the common ownership. Okay, coming to this 19th century, the middle of the 19th century, I'm talking about 1840s, the major works of this thinker are going to be published. He also faces a particular situation. Getting it? And that particular situation was the negative ramifications of capitalism are on the surface, very clearly seen. Okay, and this is going to incentivize, this is going to motivate this thinker to come out with solution. He comes out again with an elaborate scheme of dealing with this particular problem. Okay, I'll just remind you this, that Marx at his time faced the question of capitalism. This was a political question. Okay, this was a political question. This was a political challenge that he was addressing. When he is describing about this challenge, he is also offering his theory, Marx's theory. Getting it? Getting it? When he's talking about certain norms, that what should be the case, he's giving his philosophy. Getting it? What should be the case, or normative political theory. Getting it? So Marxist philosophy. Are you getting this? Now, when he envisions the human nature and also society and also possibly the state, he is doing what? It is ideology, because it is also containing a vision of that communism or socialism. Okay, just to understand things from this example, while he concludes with this vision of a socialist society and after that ultimately the communism, he has just created a political thought. Are you getting this? आप फिर से समझे उसको, political theory, political philosophy, political thought. Getting it or not? So coming back to our discussion, so when he's addressing the question of capitalism, he offers a solution, and solution is that there should be an end to this institution of private property, and ultimately arrangements should be made whereby this state, which is under the command of bourgeois class, that means industrialists, that means those who are haves of the society, comes under the proletariat, that is labor class, and ultimately makes a transition towards a communist society. Okay, and what that communism means? That means there will be no upper class, no lower class, property to be held in common. So it is the society or community as a whole which is going to control resources and will take care of the needs of everyone. That means ending with which particular solution? Ending with the same solution, that is common ownership of property. Okay, common ownership of property. To deal with this challenge of capitalism, or to deal with the challenge of his time. Okay, what did Plato do? Ended with this common property solution. Yes or no? A common ownership property solution. Marx ended with common ownership of property solution. Can I say that yes, they answered in similar line, answered the same questions, and we can just make a comparison there, and it is very valid to draw a parallel between these two? Textual method induces you to do so. Okay, and there have been scholars, for example, Professor Maxey is there, Professor 𝐂𝐻𝐧𝐽 is there, who have drawn these parallels between Plato and Karl Marx. 400 some BC, 19th century. मतलब क्या है? Difference of more than 2 millennia. Do you agree with these parallels? No, we can't. Why? Because if we don't put things into context, here, when he is discussing things, that context is completely different. The context is of a political problem. So he's actually facing a political problem there in his times. And then he's suggesting some economic solution. Getting it? Political. It was a political challenge of his time. And what about this? Was there any political problem there at that moment? No. It was actually an economic problem. That means exploitation of large number of people. Okay, and he proves that through some terms which are studied by the economists, have been studied by the economist. Also, for example, he's going to take the learnings of various economists, Ricardo and all those, सबकी सीख लेता है. मतलब वो क्या कह रहा है? He is addressing an economic problem and offers a political solution. Getting it? Completely different. And how do we realize that? Only when we put the things in context. Getting it? So textual method is not correct in understanding the meaning of terms or meaning of text. Getting it? So these are the kinds of mistakes that you make when you go for textual method while studying the classics. Okay? Context, the proponents of contextual method pointed out these lacuna in textual method. And they said that, see, it is the context which is relevant. And again, when contextual method is going to be applied, you will see that it is going to enlighten you with correct meaning of the particular text, and we have examples for that. Okay, so let us say contextual method. Contextual method के examples क्या हो सकते हैं? For example, contextual method. Now see this particular thinker, Machiavelli. Okay, Machiavelli. Now Machiavelli or Machiavellianism is something which has stressed or emphasized over realist thinking. Okay, realist thinking. So he says that it is important that a ruler must not be guided by some ethical norms. Okay, or ethics must not be the determining factor behind any policy of the state. Okay, politics has its own autonomous sphere. It has its own set of rules, and then what actually should dictate the decision making is the interest of the state and its pursuit of preservation, self-preservation. Okay, that means a state must do things to guarantee its peace, its preservation, and ruling over that state must not be guided by any religious or ethical norms. Okay, that should not be the guiding factors. Okay, something which was implemented by Bismarck. Okay, it is said that Machiavellianism was very much visible in the policies of Bismarck. That means when it comes to judging the policy of the state, the criteria should be whether they have been able to meet or they have been successful in ensuring whether the interest of the state has been pursued or achieved or not. That is the only test, the only valid test to know whether the state policies are correct or not. Okay, that means their congruence with ethical or moral norms or religious norms is not a test at all. Okay, so that is something which is coming from Machiavelli. We are going to see that. So he has written this book, Prince. He has also written other books, for example, Discourses, but Prince is the most famous work because there, what Machiavelli is known for, that means his emphasis on realism, all the maxims related to realism are to be found in Prince. Okay, so there he comes out with some very troublesome maxim, very problematic maxims. For example, on one occasion he says that it is better for a ruler to be feared rather than loved. ओके, मतलब ये जरूरी है कि एक रूलर को लोग डरें, रिस्पेक्ट करें ना करें फर्क नहीं पड़ता. What actually matters is that ruler must be feared. Okay, तो रूलर को क्या चाहिए कि वो he should not seek the respect. He should ensure that people are scared of him. Now apply this learning in today's context. Can you say the same for your prime minister? That Mr. Prime Minister should, and in that case he is going to be very realist, that should aim to be feared rather than loved. No. Getting it? Textual understanding, text in itself is enough. That is not going to give you proper conclusions. Yes or no? We cannot just superimpose this learning of Prince on modern times. Yes or no? Now you can say, no, this much understanding I can have even by going with the text. That was a different time. So you will say that whenever there is danger over the state, or state is facing any kind of danger or threat, then Mr. Modi or Prime Minister should aim to be feared rather than loved. That is the conclusion that you are going to have if you follow textual method. So context gives what? Context give the idea that why, what impelled Machiavelli to say that. Getting it? It is a context. It is a context whereby he has seen the downfall of Italy. He has seen the infighting among the states there. He has seen that how foreign powers have taken the advantage of this conflict, inner conflict. Okay, and all the problems that were there because there was no strong leadership. And this context compels him, or you can say encourages him to conclude this. Okay, he might have, it is said that Machiavelli takes a lot of cues from history. So he might have come across with the same kind of circumstances in history, and that is why I concluded in that particular line. But you cannot just uh, apply this lesson for the present time without understanding the context. Getting it? See this person Hobbes. In our syllabus, the first modern political thinker. He is known for what? He is known for creating an absolutist state. Okay. So what is absolutist state? Absolutist state means the state whose power is not constrained by any body. Getting it? No restrictions on power. Getting it? That absolutist state is created by Hobbes, and in that particular state, the Leviathan, that means, it actually means a giant. Okay, because the state is absolutist, so Leviathan symbolizes this absolutist and this giant size state. Getting it or not? So मतलब यहाँ पास ये है कि Leviathan word use करने का उसका मकसद क्या है? What is the purpose behind that? So that he could convey that the state is Leviathan. It is like a giant. Okay, it is an all-powerful institution. Getting it? No one can question the action of the state. No one can question, no one can raise any voice against the state. And all this is there. All this scheme of creating this an all-powerful state is there to protect the life of individuals. So he justifies all that, this giant of an state, on the premise that this is important for preservation of life of individuals. Okay? Apply the textual method. तो आप कह सकते हैं, can you just say that whenever the life of the individuals is under threat, then create a Leviathan? Create an all-powerful absolutist state? No. Then apply the contextual method. Go into the context. So this is the context, a particular epoch, particular time period in Europe, where English Civil War was going on. Okay? And there was a constant struggle between, or conflict between Parliament and the king. Okay, and that kind of civil war led to the execution of King Charles. And when King Charles was executed, for the next 10-11 years, for a decade or so, there was no ruler. So imagine us is a medieval principality without a ruler. Which kind of disturbances you can imagine? All kinds of disturbances. Yes or no? So it is that particular context in which he is writing Leviathan. Getting it? Definitely he is responding to the challenge of his time. Okay? Machiavelli was also responding to the challenge of his time. And scholars adopting the historical approach to study political thought have concluded in the same line. So, for example, Dunning says about Machiavelli that the brilliant Florentine, he was actually born in Florentine. The brilliant Florentine was, in fullest sense, was a child of his own times. Sabine similarly concludes about uh, Machiavelli that he was narrowly located and narrowly dated. Okay? Getting it? So they were actually responding to the times, their times, and it would be incorrect to just pass on their learnings to the next generation without understanding the context. Okay? Contextual understanding is important. You can just talk about this Locke also. And there comes another aspect of contextual method that you need to understand. Locke, see, understand that Machiavelli is non-medieval. ठीक है ना? तो Machiavelli क्या करेगा? Machiavelli has started separating the politics from religion. That was not the problem before Aristotle and Plato. In that particular time, that particular era, ethics and politics were same. So for them, for example, when he says politics, when he writes politics, is the extension of another book, ethics. So ethics and politics are actually same there. Okay, both aim for the same life. So good life, good political life, these are same thing. Okay, so what it means to be a good citizen or good person, that is also same thing. So ethics, politics mean the same. The problem started in ancient times, ancient political thinking, and politics became politics came to become a vassalage of religion. Religion started dominating the politics. Getting it? So for a long period of time, and this particular thinker is going to start a very important work of giving an autonomous sphere of politics, autonomous sphere to politics. Okay? Separating it out of religion. Getting it? So that is what Machiavelli did. So he's kind of discovering a continent of politics. Getting it? And Hobbes does what? Hobbes, maybe he's just sweeping the continent so that people start living there. Getting it? So he comes out with a complete theory of sovereignty. And what did Locke do? Locke makes it completely habitable. That continent of political domain. How? Because हॉब्स ने क्या किया? अभी मैंने बताया कि हॉब्स ने एक ऐसी सिचुएशन से एस्केप रूट दिया जो बहुत ज़्यादा डिस्टर्बिंग है. लेकिन अच्छा क्या किया? अच्छा ये किया कि एक सोवरेंटी, एक सोवरेन बना के चला गया. उस सोवरेन के ऊपर चर्च का कोई कंट्रोल नहीं है. समझ रहे हो इस चीज को? तो मैकियावेली ने शुरू किया था रिलीजन से अलग करना, और इसने उस चीज को बहुत अच्छे से कंप्लीट कर दिया कि हाँ अब चर्च का कोई रोल नहीं है, क्योंकि भाई इसके ऊपर तो कोई राजा है ही नहीं. दिस स्टेट इज एन ऑल पावरफुल. ओके, व्हाट लॉक डिड? Locke is going to domesticate this Leviathan, this giant. Getting it? How? By preserving, by guaranteeing basic rights. Okay, right to life, liberty, property, which even that state cannot take away. Getting it? That state cannot. Now this is the 18th century I'm talking about. Locke, 18th century. Getting it? This is 17th century, 1651, Leviathan. Okay, 18th century Locke. Now understand that when he is talking about protection to life, liberty and property, many times he just says right to property, which actually includes life and liberty. So property was having such a high importance in his writing, that how that is important for life, for liberty. Okay. Then there has been this scholar, Macpherson. Okay, so we have these thinkers and then we have scholars. Scholars क्या करते हैं? Scholars study those thinkers and they study them so deeply that we can just rely on their understanding. Okay, so we enlighten our ideas, our learnings about those thinkers by study, by conclusions that these scholars have made. Macpherson happens to be one such scholar who has studied Hobbes, who has studied Locke. Okay, and he said that, see, when it comes to their zeal for protection of property, it must be noted that they are defending the property of nascent bourgeois class that is emerging. Understand that this is a time period where there is bourgeois class, that is industrialist class that we know it today, although that the actual meaning is middle class, started emerging. Okay, you can say capitalism started emerging at that time. So this whole theory of Locke, according to Macpherson, is there to safeguard the property of bourgeois. Okay, and he was so convinced about this that he called Locke to be a scholar of bourgeois class, a philosopher of bourgeois class. Okay, claiming that whatever Locke is saying is to safeguard the property of bourgeois, that is halves of the society. अभी हम ये कह सकते हैं halves of the society, ठीक है ना? तो फिर क्या बोला? क्या ये कहना सही होगा? मैकफर्सन के इस इंटरप्रिटेशन को किस तरह से जस्टिफाई कर सकते हैं आप? हाउ कैन यू जस्टिफाई इट? मे बी just by considering the context, he is enlightening us. He is putting things into context. उसने बोला कि हाँ, अगर आपको लॉक का समझना है तो just remember that this is a time when capitalism is emerging and nascent bourgeois class is emerging. So whatever he is saying is for the protection of that bourgeois class. Okay? But then comes someone called Tully, J. Tully. Just like Macpherson is there, Tully is also there. And J. Tully points out that no, this contextual understanding is not correct. Okay, Macpherson tries to understand this text of John Locke by putting him into context and concludes something. Tully criticizes this understanding of the context. Okay, Tully says that no, Marx has understood this particular context incorrectly. The correct context of Locke's defense of property is not the defense of property of bourgeois class against the state. It is actually the defense of the property of religious dissenters against the state. Religious dissenters means dissenters of religion against the state. So a state must not take away the property of those who are dissenters, religious dissenters. That was the purpose of Locke. While he provided or accorded the primacy to the right to property, the intention was not to protect the property of bourgeois class against the state, but the property of religious dissenters. Now this shows what? That it is important, according to contextual approach, to understand the context, but also what is also important is to understand the context correctly. समझ रहे हो आप इस चीज को? Macpherson took a contextual approach to this particular thinking, but that contextual understanding was incorrect. क्या incorrect था? Context लिया उसने, लेकिन context को सही नहीं समझा. टुली ने ये पॉइंट आउट किया कि आपने कॉन्टेक्सुअल मेथड तो लगाया, लेकिन कॉन्टेक्सुअल मेथड में क्या समझना पड़ता है? कॉन्टेक्स्ट, और उसी को आप मिस कर गए, कॉन्टेक्स्ट गलत समझ गए. समझ रहे हो? टुली ये पॉइंट आउट कर रहा है. तो यहां पर what it shows that adoption of the contextual method in itself is not enough. What is also important is how we understand the context. Yes or no? Understanding the context itself correctly is a pertinent question. Okay, so for what we have understood, just have a recap. firstly we saw the textual method, what it means. Then we saw the grave errors that we can make while we adopt the textual method. And that explains why contextual method should be applied. Then we saw how contextual method is applied, okay, and enriches our understanding. After that, what we saw, that it is not just important to apply contextual method, but to apply the context or understand the context itself correctly. Getting it? What we mean by saying context itself correctly? There is always the danger of misinterpreting the context. So what is important is that we can just somehow peek into the minds of a thinker and understand the context according to his own understanding. That means, what is the context of Hobbes' writing according to Hobbes? Because if we do not understand it properly, we might be imposing our own understanding of context in that particular writing. Sir, समझ रहे हैं इस चीज को? मतलब क्या है सिंपल कि सिर्फ कॉन्टेक्चुअल अप्रोच जरूरी नहीं है. कॉन्टेक्चुअल अप्रोच के बाद जरूरी है ये भी जानना कि वो कॉन्टेक्स्ट हम सही समझे हैं कि नहीं. हो सकता है हमारे हिसाब से हमने मैकफर्सन ने तो लगा दिया अपना कॉन्टेक्चुअल अप्रोच, लेकिन उसको पॉइंट आउट कर रहा है टुली कि तुमने कॉन्टेक्चुअल अप्रोच लगाया लेकिन कॉन्टेक्स्ट ही नहीं समझा ढंग से, इसलिए तुम गलत कंक्लूजन में पहुंचे. ये कहना कि लॉक बुर्जुआ क्लास की प्रॉपर्टी को डिफेंड करने के लिए राइट टू प्रॉपर्टी का एक अधिकार बना रहा है, और दूसरी बात कहना कि रिलीजियस डिसेंटर की प्रॉपर्टी को बचाने के लिए राइट टू प्रॉपर्टी के अधिकार को इतना ज्यादा स्ट्रेस दे रहा है, ये दो बहुत अलग अलग बात है. ये सुनो, टुली ने यही पॉइंट आउट किया. समझ रहे हैं इस चीज को आप? You need to understand the context that philosopher himself would have understood. Okay? तो ये इंपॉर्टेंस है इसकी कॉन्टेक्चुअल अप्रोच के. ओके, समझ रहे हो सर? ठीक है, चलो ठीक है, आराम से देखते हैं. हमने पॉइंट आउट क्या किया कि टेक्सचुअल मेथड इज नॉट इम्पॉर्टेंट. ओके, इज नॉट enough. Many times it can just lead you to some inappropriate conclusions. That is why contextual method is required. Then what is also important is understanding the exact or correct context, because contextual method itself, or you can say also, can lead you to incorrect conclusions if you do not understand the context properly. And as per Tully, this mistake was made by Macpherson in interpreting Locke, or especially his right to property thesis. Okay, अब समझो इस चीज को कि if we go by contextual method, what we actually mean, हमारा मतलब क्या है कि when we try to understand things by applying the context, those who are the proponents of this method want us to do what? They want us to just keep aside our own presuppositions, our own way of thinking. Getting it? We just bracket it aside, keep aside, and then try to understand the context. समझ रहे हो इस चीज को? सिंपल है, मतलब कि I am having my own suppositions, presuppositions. Okay, my own way of thinking. I have to keep it aside, and then I have to approach the text to understand the context properly first, and then derive the meaning. That is what contextual approach is saying. Tell me, if that is so, then contextual approach can claim that the meaning of the text is correct only when you adopt a particular context which is there in the mind of the thinker, and if you just don't consider that context, by default the meaning that you will derive will be incorrect. Correct? Getting it or not? So whatever has been written in Leviathan, let us say, or Prince, or two treatises written by Locke, is meaningful in that particular context alone. Correct? Getting it or not? Getting it or not? Yes, in that particular context alone. If that is so, now we know that the context has changed. Can we say that those texts have become completely meaningless? Yes, that is what it means. That is what it means. Because their meaning is valid only in a particular context. Okay, we applied that context. We understood that meaning correctly. But what we should do now with this Leviathan, which was meaningful in that particular context only? Valid question or not? यार contextual approach तो इतना अच्छा लग रहा था, है ना? किसने तो पर सारी प्रॉब्लम सॉल्व कर दी और अभी इससे ज्यादा बकवास कुछ नहीं लग रहा है. It is completely meaningless to read Leviathan if its correct meaning is to be found only in that particular context. Okay? समझ रहे हो इस चीज को? अच्छा, पहली प्रॉब्लम ये. दूसरी प्रॉब्लम ये कि if the proponents of contextual approach say that it is the context that makes the text what it is, then definitely it is the context of our own time that makes what we are. Are you getting this? So just like text is meaningful in that particular context, we are what we are because of this context. समझ रहे हो इस चीज को? Is it humanly possible to completely keep aside these all presuppositions or this context that we are living in and just adopt that particular context? That is a questionable premise. Okay? And in this context, there is this scholar who can come handy to understand, to enlighten us. That is Gadamer. Might have heard about it. Him. Gadamer. Gadamer is a scholar. He says, okay, you are facing this problem. The problem of keeping your presuppositions and way of thinking aside to understand this particular text, not needed. Not needed. So Gadamer is saying, no, not needed. Understand that it is firstly humanly impossible to keep aside all the presuppositions, because if the context makes the text meaningful, it is our context that makes our existence. Yes or no? We have learned to think, to interlink, to interpret in a particular context. So separating our context completely is not possible. Even when we apply the contextual understanding, it is not possible for us to keep aside all the presuppositions, all the way of thinking and interlinking that we have come to have because of this context. So the thing that you're pointing out, completely keep your presuppositions aside to understand the real meaning, is not possible. Okay, it is not possible. It is not possible that I just keep aside the very environment that has taught me how to think, how to interpret, on all that actually constitutes my context. Getting it? Gadamer says that this is not needed also. Okay, and here he says, he talks something about fusion of horizons. फ्यूजन ऑफ होराइजन्स. देखिए बहुत रिच डिबेट है. प्लीज इसमें मैंने कहा ना कि इतना इंटरेस्टिंग है कि क्या बताऊं. ओके, ये बहुत इंटरेस्टिंग है. इसमें देखो कि गैडमर क्या बोल रहे हैं. गैडमर बोल रहे हैं कि यार अगर दिक्कत ये है कि दिस कैन नॉट बी केप्ट असाइड, आई एम सेइंग देयर इज नो नीड टू कीप असाइड. फ्यूजन ऑफ द होराइजन्स. व्हाट इज दिस थीसिस, फ्यूजन ऑफ द होराइजन्स? इस थीसिस में ये बोलते हैं कि there is a context in which that text is written and there is a context in which I live and I exist. Fusing these two horizons is important. So the meaning that is going to be derived by fusion of the horizons is the correct meaning. Okay, and how this fusion of horizon horizons is valid. मतलब how this thesis is valid, what reason Gadamer provides. Understand this. Gadamer says that all humans are actually the part of this effective history. It is the same historical process that we all have undergone. समझ रहे हो? देखो लॉजिक यार इसका हर बार आपको थिंकर का क्या बोलना है, क्या करना है आपको, उसका उसमें स्ट्रेंथ, उसमें पावर देखनी है, कितना पावर है उसके आर्गुमेंट में. ओके, तभी आप इसको अच्छे से समझ भी पाएंगे. और एक बार समझने के बाद आपको बस उसे आंसर्स में लाना होता है. यही है पॉलिटिकल साइंस यूपीएससी के लिए अगर बात करें तो. एक बार ढंग से उसको समझ जाओ, ओके, फिर उसको उसी वर्ड्स में हैंडआउट्स वगैरह आपको मिलेंगे, उसको डिक्टेशंस मिलेंगे, हैंडआउट्स मिलेंगे, तो उसमें उसी वर्ड्स में आप 3-4 वर्ड पढ़ लो और वही आंसर में डालो. ओके, एग्जामिनर क्या चाहता है कि अगर गैडमर की बात हो रही है तो आपने उसे बहुत ढंग से समझाया कि नहीं. अगर आपने इसे सुपरफिशियली समझाया तो आंसर में आपके दिखेगा. और दूसरी बात, अगर आपने इसे बहुत अच्छे से समझा और फिर उन वर्ड्स को यूज नहीं किया जो जरूरी है, तब भी बात नहीं बनेगी. तो दोनों चीजें इंपॉर्टेंट हैं, टू अंडरस्टैंड दिस थिंग प्रॉपरली एंड सेकेंडली टू यूज द कीवर्ड्स. दैट इज व्हाई आई एम एम्फसाइजिंग ऑन दीज कीवर्ड्स, है ना. इसलिए वो हैंड रिटन क्लास नोट्स भी पढ़ना जरूरी है और हैंडआउट्स भी, क्योंकि वो चीज़ आपको बहुत ज़्यादा पक्की कर देगी. आप ये समझेंगे क्लास में कॉन्सेप्ट से कभी कंप्रोमाइज़ नहीं होगा. लेकिन उसके बाद एक और स्टेज रह जाती है कि उन्हीं वर्ड्स में लिखे हुए राइटअप को आप बार बार पढ़ डालो. ओके, तो गेडमर का कहना है कि भाई देयर हैज बीन अ फ्यूजन ऑफ होराइजंस. ही टॉक्स अबाउट समथिंग कॉल्ड इफेक्टिव हिस्ट्री एंड देयरबाय he says that we all have undergone the process of same history. Okay, so there has been a process of history or historical process, you can say historical process, and we have undergone the same historical process. So same historical process का मतलब क्या, कि we at this age living in 21st century, people in 18th century or 17th century, all are part of same effective history. Understand this? All are part of same effective history. In a sense, what he's saying, that Locke and you are part of same effective history. Both Locke and you have undergone same historical process. Getting it? This is what he's saying. And because of this same effective history, our proposition and the proposition of those thinkers is not going to be very different. Are you getting this? He's saying that your proposition, the one who is interpreting the thinker, and thinker's proposition himself is not going to be very different. If that is so, then what he's saying? That there is no need to keep aside your presupposition, to keep aside your own context. Okay, because the presuppositions shaped by this context and presuppositions of that particular age have undergone the same historical process, and that is why we can very well arrive at some meaningful conclusions even by applying this particular presupposition, or from approaching this particular text with all these presuppositions that we have and try to understand the text. Very meaningful conclusions can be derived. This is what Gadamer is saying. Very much correct. But that is contextual approach, and this is Gadamerian hermeneutics. This is not contextual approach. This is Gadamer saying something in addition to what has already been said in contextual approach. Yeah, he in a way is saying that this strict insistence on keeping your presuppositions aside, as proponents of contextual approach would like you to do, is not needed. And he gives a very powerful argument for this, that why we don't need to keep aside all the presuppositions, because your presuppositions are not different from the presuppositions of 19th century or 20th century, because all have undergone same historical process, all have been part of same effective history. So the fusion of horizon is going to lead you to a correct meaning of the text. That is what he's saying. Clear? Okay, so everyone has undergone a same effective history. What by that he means that there is a larger picture of civilization that we should keep in mind while we address this particular question of presupposition. So the kind of problems that the humanity at that time was facing is not drastically different from the problems that this humanity at this time is facing. Okay, maybe the most basic questions that an individual faces with respect to his concern for survival are actually the same questions that were there at that time, and also the same question that we today at this time we are facing. Okay, so they are same. So the historical process at large is same, and that is why presuppositions are not going to be very different. Okay, so if you just fuse our context with the context of the scholar, then definitely some meaningful conclusions, correct meaningful conclusions can be arrived. This is what he's saying. Okay, that would mean what? That an 18th century Europe is not very different from or 21st century Asia or 21st century Europe. Is that correct? No, that was not acceptable. Again, to Cambridge School, which objected to textual method, is going to object to Gadamer also. Because what this seems to convey? This seems to convey that you have seen colonialism, you have seen imperialism, mercantilism, globalization. Okay? And there, in all these phases, you have seen people to be certainly the winners and the losers. Yes or no? To say that both are part of the same historical process is actually overstretching the argument. Yes or no? So Cambridge School says that this would be incorrect to say that this fusion is possible at all. Cambridge School denies, rejects this Gadamerian hermeneutics or this thesis of the fusion of horizons. क्या बोलते हैं? इसको रिजेक्ट करते हैं. क्यों? क्योंकि ये पॉसिबल नहीं है कि हम colonialism, imperialism, capitalism, globalization, इन सारे phases को एक single effective history का part मान सकें. क्योंकि इसका मतलब क्या होगा कि slave trade जो हो रहा था, तो एक थे जो lose कर रहे थे उसको, उस गेम को, एक थे जो winners थे, है ना? एक थे जो exploit हो रहे थे, दूसरे थे जो उस exploitation की वजह से flourish कर रहे थे, prosperous हो रहे थे. हम कैसे कह सकते हैं कि दोनों एक ही हिस्ट्री के, एक ही हिस्टोरिकल प्रोसेस के हिस्से हैं? इनका हिस्टोरिकल एक्सपीरियंस कंप्लीटली अलग है उनसे जो एक्सप्लॉइट कर रहे थे. आर यू गेटिंग दिस? Their historical experience who were slaves is completely different from those who were the masters. Yes or no? Simple. And Cambridge School objected to this. It said that no, this is not acceptable at all. ठीक है? तो फिर क्या? अब उसने तो कॉन्टेक्चुअल अप्रोच को वहां पास प्रपोज किया था, और कॉन्टेक्चुअल अप्रोच में अभी हमने देखा कि चीजें मीनिंगलेस बन जाती हैं उस कॉन्टेक्स्ट को अगर हटा दे तो. गेटिंग इट? डिबेट थोड़ा कॉम्प्लेक्स हो गया. अब कोई चीज काम नहीं कर रही है, ना तो टेक्सचुअल अप्रोच, ना तो कॉन्टेक्चुअल अप्रोच. और गैडामेरियन तो आप पहले से ही अपना नाक सिकोड़ रहे थे कि यार ये कैसा है, ये कैसे बोल रहा है, वी आर ऑल पार्ट ऑफ सेम हिस्ट्री. Okay, so what do you say then? Which approach? School comes to the defense of contextual approach again. Okay, आंसर वहीं कहीं मिलेंगे. So contextual approach में बोलता है कि okay, firstly it acknowledges that there is baby in the bathwater that contextual approach is not able to notice. What is that? कि भाई contextual approach क्या कर रहा है कि it is only in that particular context that text is relevant. If that is so, अगर just remove the context, the text becomes meaningless. Meaning completely meaningless. It loses all the significance. Getting it? यही तो मतलब है इस चीज का. हम अगर सही context में applying तो यहाँ बस इस चीज को काउंटर करने के लिए ये बोला गया, और काउंटर करने के लिए कौन आया? अगेन टुली, द वन हु criticized the premises adopted by Macpherson to interpret Locke. So Tully ने मीनिंग एंड कॉन्टेक्स्ट करके एक बुक लिखी. So he wrote a book on meaning and context, and there he discusses that understand when it comes to social context, that is definitely going to enrich your understanding. Getting it? But to say that it is only by that context you can understand the meaning, that would be incorrect. That would be overstretching the importance of context. Definitely context helps you to understand things, but the meaning can be arrived only when that context is used. That is meaningless. That is meaningless, because then the proponents of hardcore proponents of contextual approach are throwing the baby out with the bathwater. That means they are actually throwing all that which is also significant with which is insignificant. There are so many things which are significant in textbook, in text like Leviathan, in text like Prince, and saying that they make sense only in a particular context is actually declaring them insignificant for other contexts. That would be incorrect. That is an incorrect conclusion. Getting it? समझ रहे हो इस चीज को? और no, just enrich your understanding of those texts also by applying the context. Also by applying the context. Yes, also by applying the context, the correct context. But don't say that meaning is valid only in that particular context. That is what it is saying. Okay, understand that this Gadamerian hermeneutics was criticized by Cambridge School, and when this school is being criticized, this school is criticizing Gadamerian thesis, then can we say that in that particular time, to some extent, the proponents of textual approach are going to make a case for the importance of classics again? क्यों? क्योंकि जब ये बोला जा रहा है कि हमारा प्रीसपोजिशन और उनका प्रीसपोजिशन बहुत ज़्यादा अलग नहीं है, और इसको कैम्ब्रिज स्कूल रिजेक्ट कर रही है, उस टाइम में जब कॉन्टेक्चुअल अप्रोच को कुछ स्कॉलर्स ये कह के रिजेक्ट कर रहे हैं कि भाई ये भी किसी काम का नहीं है, तो टेक्सचुअल अप्रोच फिर से सामने आएगा. हाँ, कुछ टाइम के लिए आया टेक्सचुअल अप्रोच टाइम. Okay, so again textual approach comes into scene, but again its relevance as an approach to show the meaning has already been invalidated, because यहाँ पास ये बहुत अच्छे से establish हो गया कि when it comes to the study of classics, it is not simply the comparative study for all the answers that have been provided to the same questions. It is not that. Okay, हमने बहुत डेफिनेट वे में वो कंक्लूजन्स देखे जहाँ पास ये साफ साफ दिख रहा था कि हम गलत कंक्लूजन्स ड्रॉ कर रहे हैं. आपने देखा प्लेटो के केस में, मार्क्स के केस में, सारा कुछ देखा आपने. तो फिर क्या किया जाए ऐसे कॉन्टेक्स्ट में? एक स्कॉलर आता है, क्विंटन स्किनर. ओके, क्या नाम है? क्विंटन स्किनर. So what Skinner says in this regard is this, that when it comes to understanding the meaning, and social context in itself is not going to enlighten us fully, then what the proponents of contextual approach might be missing is the complete history of that particular context, the complete of that particular context, including a very important context called linguistic context. Okay, तो ये linguistic context की बात करते हैं Skinner. So what he says, what it actually means, एक और context जुड़ गया, linguistic context. Contextual method को बोलते हैं social context. What is being added here is a linguistic context. तो linguistic context का क्या मतलब है कि when you see thinkers like Machiavelli, like Locke, like Leviathan, and all other thinkers, whenever the time at which they were writing, they were philosophizing, they had access to a specific set of vocabulary, a language, which they employed to deal with the question of their time. Okay? And in order to understand them fully, we actually need to understand the meaning of those terms that dominated in that particular time. Linguistic context. We need to understand the correct meaning or the language that was dominant in that particular time. Okay, so to say that would mean that when Locke is giving his thesis, या कोई भी thinker अपनी thesis दे रहा है, अपना thought दे रहा है, तो the vocabulary that he's using has a particular meaning in that particular period, in that particular time period, and that is important to understand in order to fully appreciate, in order to correctly understand the meaning of that particular text. Okay, so what is important is to understand the language of that particular time. Okay, this language of that particular time also corresponds to something you can call to be the dominant political tradition. Dominant political tradition of that time, or dominant social and economic tradition of that time, because when it comes to context, it is shaped by religious factors, economic factors, social factors, political factors, many factors. Okay, so what does it mean? जब हम Machiavelli पढ़ेंगे तो you will come across this word virtue. Now you have this word in English, virtue. This is the word which was famous in during the time of Renaissance. Okay, this is a good example to cite here, linguistic context. So, in order to understand the Machiavellian thought, when he is using this particular word frequently, you have to understand the language that dominated at that time. Okay, and also the tradition of that time. You can say what actually was which particular language was dominant at that time, and the words that were there in that particular language, what they actually meant. If you just take it to be an English word or a form of this word virtue, then you will completely misunderstand Machiavelli. By virtue, what Machiavelli meant was individual's capability to master his destiny. It is about the strength of an individual. Okay, the guts, the courage that one has, or the qualities, set of qualities you can say, that one has to master, to realize his destiny. Now, virtue, as the word you know, has no relation with the meaning that you just gave to the word virtue. If you do not understand this meaning, then you will never be able to understand the Machiavellian thought. Okay? Does that make sense? Huh? So, contextual method, not enough. Yes or no? Because there is baby in the water that they are not able to notice. That means there is something which is so significant in the classics, and that is being completely missed by contextual approach, the proponents of contextual method. Okay? By saying that text is meaningful only in that particular context, is saying that it is meaningless in all other context. तो why to study Leviathan at all? Yes or no? तो इसमें फिर आप ये भी conclude कर सकते हैं कि just see the last part of the last class. मैंने जब ये conclude किया कि those classics are relevant because they raise the fundamental questions. The contextualist approach is not going to agree with that. है ना? Because those questions vary in their meaning in different context. The one who subscribes to this linguistic approach is also going to consider the same. The one who subscribes to this linguistic context is also going to conclude that no, classics are not raising the same fundamental questions time and again, and the study of classics should never be about this comparative study of answers of the same questions. समझ रहे हो आप? जहां कल क्लास खत्म हो रही है वो थॉट अभी कंप्लीटली डिस्ट्रॉय किया जा रहा है, हाँ, डिसमेंटल हो रहा है ना? तो अब कंक्लूजन क्या निकल रहे हैं? कंक्लूजन तो बिल्कुल अलग निकल रहे हैं यहाँ पास। लगता है कुछ भारी हो गया। हाँ, क्या भारी हो गया? ये क्वेश्चन कि भाई फिर क्लासिक्स कैसे रेलेवेंट है? हाउ देन द क्लासिक्स आर रेलेवेंट? व्हाट मेक्स देम रेलेवेंट? यस सर, एनीवन? What does not make them relevant is this pertinent question or set of questions. Yes or no? ये relevant उसको नहीं बनाते. Okay? हम नहीं कह सकते कि we are going to get enlightened to solve the problems of our day because they are almost similar. That would be an incorrect statement or incorrect understanding of classics. Getting it? It would be incorrect to say that we are going to get enlightened by reading Leviathan or Prince to solve the problems of present era because those problems are almost same, if not completely same. That is an incorrect understanding. Okay, according to this learning that we just developed. Then what conclusions we make? Not able to think? So just leave those classics, they are not relevant now, huh? And let's start Plato. The question उसी से आएगा तो फिर उसी से बात करते हैं. Actually, यहाँ पास इस study ने हमें ये सिखाया कि when it comes to textual method, that is not going to be workable very much because then it is not going to help us to arrive at correct meaning. Contextual method, yes, showcases the importance of context. Okay, then we saw the limitations of contextual method, that context alone, if considered, is not something which is good because context alone will give meaning to the text. Then that would mean that the text becomes meaningless if we just leave that context and start living in some other context. Gadamerian comes in between and talks about the fusion of horizon thesis, and that is also something which is not going to be workable or acceptable. This is a claim big enough, or this is too big or a claim to accept. Okay, क्योंकि सारा human civilization has been part of the same historical process. That is also not correct. What is appealing there so far, the most appealing is linguistic context. Yes or no? बहुत अपीलिंग है ये, क्योंकि इसके डोमिनेंट ट्रेडिशन थे और क्या थे और लैंग्वेज में डिफरेंट वर्ड्स का मीनिंग क्या था. दैट डेफिनेटली मेक्स आवर अंडरस्टैंडिंग रिचर. So that helps understanding thing. Understand when it comes to the importance of classics. It must be realized that importance of classics is not that they are same or they are raising the same fundamental question. The importance is to be found in the very difference that exists between classics and present era. ठीक है ना? Completely opposite conclusion that we drew yesterday. Yes or no? The importance of classic is in realizing that Hobbes lived in a completely different era and we live in a completely different era. Getting it? It is in realizing that Hobbes in a completely different era approached the problem in this manner, and by taking cues from Hobbes we can also be critical to the challenges of our time. Understand the significance. हम इस चीज में बात करेंगे, थोड़ा सा और बात करेंगे भाई। जब हमने ये देखा, अगर हम ये कंक्लूड करते, if we could have concluded that it is the same problem that they were facing and we are also facing, so we would just agree with the same, we will be making the comparisons of the different answer. It is in the classics importance lies in realization that that is a different epoch, that is the different period, and this is a different period. Now that is a different period, and how the thinker approached through critical lens the problem of his own times. We should take today's things not for granted and should apply the same critical lens to the problem that we are facing at our time. समझ रहे हो इस चीज को? नहीं समझे? हाँ, क्योंकि हॉब्स ने अपने टाइम की प्रॉब्लम को क्या एक्सेप्ट कर लिया? नहीं, वो एक क्रिटिकल पर्सपेक्टिव अडॉप्ट किया, उसको देखा, उसको रिजॉल्व करने की कोशिश की। हमारा टाइम अलग है, हमारा टाइम अलग है, लेकिन हम फिर लेवियाथन क्यों पढ़े? हम लेवियाथन ये सीखने के लिए पढ़े। Why we should study Leviathan? To learn from this thinker that how he has not been willing to accept the situation of his time, he became critical towards it. Critical का मतलब he adopted critical approach, did not take things for granted, and approached them with a solution that was the result of his critical analysis. So if we also adopt the critical analysis for the challenges of our own times, we also might be able to address the challenge, because we see those thinkers to a good extent succeeding in dealing with the challenges of their time to a good extent. Okay, तो रेलेवेंस किस चीज में है? रेलेवेंस इस रियलाइजेशन में है कि हमारा टाइम अलग है, उनका टाइम अलग है। ओके, रेलेवेंस इस रियलाइजेशन में नहीं है कि हमारी और उनकी सेम प्रॉब्लम है। रेलेवेंस इस रियलाइजेशन में है कि हमारा टाइम अलग है, उनका टाइम अलग था, and they approached, they did not take things for granted, they approached them critically, those challenges critically. We can also do the same for our time. Definitely, that is what we how one approached the challenge of his time. Okay, did not just accept the situation. Hobbes did not just become satisfied with the disturbances that were caused because of the political turbulence. He did not consider this to be the fate of humanity. He dealt with it. Yes or no? Getting it? So the importance of Leviathan is not that कि हमारे यहाँ भी अगर कोई political turbulence आए तो हम भी we start favoring the same absolute state. No, we can take this lesson from Hobbes that we are not going to accept the political turbulence to be our fate. We are going to answer, we are going to take it as a challenge, we are going to give solution to it, we are going to approach this problem critically. This is the importance of the classic. Okay, this is the importance of the classic. What Plato said, Plato did not say कि भाई एथेंस में तो इस तरह की लड़ाई, इस तरह के बच्चे तैयार नहीं होंगे जैसे स्पार्टा में होते हैं। प्लेटो ने क्या कहा? नहीं, हम कर सकते हैं। Getting it? प्लेटो ने बोला कि नहीं, it can be done with this elaborate scheme of education. You will see that in Plato. This is what we learn from Plato, and not that whenever there is a problem, just come out with this philosopher king or this is elaborate scheme of education. He was not ready to accept this as a fate of Athens, that it will remain a defeated city-state when it comes to Sparta. That is what you can learn from Plato. So this is the importance of classics. Definitely importance के हम points नहीं note कर रहे हैं, क्योंकि points में हम बहुत सारे general points भी include करेंगे कि when you read Leviathan, you actually automatically come to know about the time of the time and place. Yes or no? What was England of that particular time period? भाई वो तो किसी मूवी से भी आप जान सकते हो, समझ रहे हो इस चीज को कि नहीं, कि भाई उसका टाइम पीरियड क्या था। तो ये एक लेवियाथन पढ़ने का भी फायदा होगा, लेकिन वो बहुत सॉलिड फायदा नहीं है। सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट फायदा क्या है इसको, इसकी रिकॉग्निशन में, कि कैसे हमारा टाइम उनके टाइम से डिफरेंट था, और कैसे उन्होंने अपने टाइम में क्रिटिकल पर्सपेक्टिव अडॉप्ट किया चीजों चेंज करने का, और कैसे हम यही काम अपने टाइम में कर सकते हैं। गेटिंग इट? तो है नहीं बहुत अच्छी चीज है ये। हाँ, थोड़ा सा इंटेलेक्चुअली भारी है। क्यों भारी है पता है? क्योंकि हमने उसको ढंग से जानने की कोशिश की। हम बड़ी आसानी से बोल सकते थे टेक्सचुअल अप्रोच मतलब टेक्स्ट इज एनफ, कॉन्टेक्सचुअल अप्रोच मतलब कॉन्टेक्स्ट इज एनफ, एंड जस्ट कुड हैव मूव्ड ऑन। ठीक है, ये नहीं करने बैठे। अभी टाइम है हमारे पास, बढ़िया, नवंबर दिसंबर तक का टाइम है, फिर उसके बाद आप फिल्म से फोकस करेंगे, तो वी हैव एनफ टाइम टू अंडरस्टैंड थिंग डीपली। ओके, बिकॉज दैट इज, अगर आप दोनों ने वो नहीं किया, आप पॉलिटिकल साइंस एंजॉय नहीं करेंगे, और ये तो बैड लक होगी आपकी। ओके, कि इफ यू डोंट एंजॉय पॉलिटिकल साइंस, इट्स योर बैड लक। ठीक है, सो इसको आज थोड़ा ज़्यादा हो गया, आज यहाँ तक रखते हैं। ओके, आई सजेस्ट, आई एम नॉट गेटिंग डिक्टेशंस, क्योंकि मैं इनमें भी 3-4 दिन डिक्टेशंस नहीं दूंगा। ओके, हम डिक्टेशंस लेना शुरू होंगे जब हम चैप्टर शुरू करेंगे। अभी हम इसी तरह पढ़ते जाते हैं 2-3 दिन और। ओके, तो ऐसा करो, if this was slightly heavy because of this intellectual debate, just listen it again, okay? Because I'm going to ask the same questions tomorrow. Okay? Okay, so this was all with respect to the issues related to methodology. Okay? And also, just enjoy that how convincing it was to conclude in the line that classics are important for the set of questions they raise. And here, again very convincing, कि नहीं यार, that is rubbish, the conclusion that we made yesterday, and this is the real thing. Yes or no? ये है इंटेलेक्चुअल रिगर, ये है इंटेलेक्चुअल जर्नी, रोलर कोस्टर राइड इंटेलेक्ट की, समझ रहे हो आप? तो ये हम पूरे कोर्स में करने, मतलब हमको इसी तरह अप्रोच करना है। ठीक है, डिक्टेशंस और हैंडआउट्स भी होंगे, लेकिन ये है जिसको आप जाके गैडामोर को अभी अभी रियलाइज करोगे कि गैडामोर डिस्कस हुआ था क्लास में, और इसका रेलेवेंस क्या है। कॉन्टेक्सचुअल अप्रोच का दूसरा साइड क्या है? एक तो ठीक है वो कॉन्टेक्स्ट, दूसरा क्या है कि वो जो बाथ वाटर में बेबी पड़ा है उसको भी नहीं देख पा रहा है वो, है ना, जो सिग्निफिकेंट चीज है वो भी नहीं देख पा रहा है वो, है ना, उसको भी फेंक दे रहा है ना। तो अगर ये अंडरस्टैंडिंग आपके आंसर्स में आई, तो फिर बहुत अच्छे मार्क्स लाने से नहीं रोक सकता आपको कोई। ओके, तो एक सुपरफिशियल अंडरस्टैंडिंग नहीं चाहिए। हम थोड़ा दिमाग लगा लेंगे, थोड़ा सर दर्द हो जाएगा, डिस्प्लिन वगैरह ले लेंगे, ओके, लेकिन हम डेप्थ से कंप्रोमाइज नहीं करेंगे। ओके, जो जो चीज़ इतनी डीप है उसको हम जानेंगे, और हम उसको इसके लिए बैठे हैं यहाँ पास क्वेश्चन आंसर के लिए, Q&A सेशन के लिए। तो ये ऐसी चीज, कोई चीज़ थोड़ी ना कि आपने खुद से ही पढ़ना शुरू कर दी है। मैं हूँ उस चीज़ को गाइड करने के लिए, आपकी नाव को चलाने के लिए। ओके, तो मैं हूँ भाई आपके सारे क्वेश्चंस को डील करने के लिए, तो ये चीज़ आसान हो गई, है ना, एक विद इन अ टाइम फ्रेम में ये चीज़ आसान हो गई। हाँ बताएं सर। हाँ, ये एग्जैक्टली यही बात मैंने भी बोली है। वो ये बात आप जो बोल रहे हैं कंक्लूजन, ये उसमें शामिल है, जब मैंने कहा कि हम उनसे ये सीखते हैं कि उन्होंने अपने उस चैलेंज को अपना फेट नहीं मान लिया, तो उन्होंने क्रिटिकल होके उसको चैलेंज की तरह देखा, फिर उसको नहीं, वो हम डायरेक्टली नहीं अपना सकते, वो हम डायरेक्टली इस बेसिस में नहीं अपना सकते। You understand the question what he's asking? If you say that the importance of classic lies in realizing that how those thinkers approach the challenge of their time, can we just copy the approach that they adopted? No, we just can't copy. Maybe after analysis, our approach turns out to be the same, but not copy. That is what it means. हाँ, क्योंकि कॉपी तो करना तो फिर गलत हो जाएगा ना। कॉपी करने का मतलब क्या है कि फिर आप कह रहे हैं कि वो एग्जैक्टली सेम क्वेश्चन था जिसको हम एड्रेस कर रहे हैं आज, नहीं? तो कॉपी करना गलत है, कहना गलत है। ओके, एनी अदर क्वेश्चन? नो क्वेश्चन, ओके। नहीं, उन्होंने कॉन्टेक्चुअल अप्रोच को ही और ज़्यादा रिफाइन करने के लिए फिर दूसरे तीसरे कॉन्टेक्स्ट में लाए, क्योंकि कॉन्टेक्चुअल अप्रोच में सोशल कॉन्टेक्स्ट, कॉन्टेक्चुअल अप्रोच का पूरा नाम है सोशल कॉन्टेक्स्ट। कॉन्टेक्स्ट मेथड का, कॉन्टेक्चुअल मेथड का पूरा नाम है सोशल कॉन्टेक्स्ट मेथड. सो दे वर नॉट कंसिडरिंग अदर कॉन्टेक्स्ट. लिंग्विस्टिक वाज नॉट देयर अर्लियर. नहीं, टेक्सचुअल मेथड को उतनी ज़्यादा अब रेलेवेंस नहीं है. टेक्सचुअल मेथड इज नॉट यूज वेरी मच. लिंग्विस्टिक है, और डोमिनेंट ट्रेडिशंस जो थे उस टाइम के, ये भी आज एग्री किया जाता है कि उसे भी लेना चाहिए. ओके, लेकिन आप देखें कि यहाँ पास ये एक सोशल साइंस है. कल आप एक रिसर्च आर्टिकल लिखते हैं एक जर्नल के लिए, जहाँ पास आपने गैडामेरियन हर्मेन्यूटिक्स अप्लाई किया है, और कुछ आर्ग्यूमेंट्स दे रहे हैं जहाँ बता रहे हैं कि द फ्यूजन ऑफ होराइजन इज वेरी मच वैलिड. तो वो आप जो आर्ग्यूमेंट्स दे रहे हैं उससे साबित होगा कि वो एक्सेप्टेबल है कि नहीं. समझ रहे हो आप? तो ये ऐसा नहीं है कि अब नाउ वी हैव कम टू अराइव एट अ पर्टिकुलर मेथड टू सॉल्व द पाइथागोरस थ्योरम और टू प्रूव इट. ये वो नहीं है. ये सब डिपेंड करता है कि आप कितने प्रेमाइसेस को स्ट्रॉन्ग वे में डिफेंड कर रहे हैं या काउंटर कर रहे हैं. वो आर्ग्यूमेंट डिसाइड करेगा. ओके, तो आप हो सकता है कल इस्टेब्लिश कर दें जॉन रोल्स को एक आइडियोलॉग, है ना? नहीं हो सकता एक्चुअली, लेकिन हाँ बहुत ऑलमोस्ट इम्पॉसिबल है, जैसा कि मैंने कल बताया था आपको. लेकिन मैंने तो सुन रखा है कि इम्पॉसिबल वर्ड होता ही नहीं है ना. एक्चुअली मेरा मतलब ये है कि इट ऑल डिपेंड्स अपॉन द पावर ऑफ आर्ग्यूमेंट. Okay, how you are able to address the existing philosophical premises which are almost settled. Okay, so that is how it matters. Okay, any other? Yep. ये ये अप्रोच है. देयर इज अ डिफरेंस बिटवीन मेथड एंड अप्रोच, है ना? हम अप्रोच को पढ़ेंगे पॉलिटिकल थ्योरी में. वी आर टॉकिंग अबाउट मेथड्स हियर. ओके, तो देयर इज अ डिफरेंस. बट पॉलिटिक्स में भी और ज़्यादा ये आएगा कि भाई व्हाट इज द डिफरेंस बिटवीन मेथड एंड अप्रोच. तो वी कांट जस्ट यूज दीज टर्म्स इंटरचेंजेबली. ठीक है? हाँ. ओके.